I never imagined I'd stand at my only son's funeral watching the doors instead of the casket. Yet there I was, gripping the program with white knuckles, pretending not to notice the empty seat in the front row. Everyone else noticed. Of course they did. It wasn't just another missing guest. It was my daughter-in-law, the woman who vowed to love my son, for better or worse. 39 people attended. I counted. I kept counting because it stopped my mind from collapsing on itself. 39 people showed up in the drizzle on that dull Monday morning to honor Daniel's life. But his wife, Samantha, wasn't one of them. The funeral director whispered to me gently, "Mr. Hale, should we wait a little longer? Perhaps she's stuck in traffic." Traffic. Sure. On a Monday. In a town where traffic jams are as rare as snowstorms in July. I inhaled deeply and shook my head. No. Begin the service. I delivered the eulogy myself because there was no one else who could. I talked about Daniel's childhood love for astronomy. The way he used to draw star maps with crayons before he could even spell constellation. I talked about how proud I was when he graduated with honors from Cornell, how he built his own IT firm from scratch, how he seemed destined for a future none of us doubted. But I didn't talk about his insomnia that had grown worse last year, or how he'd withdrawn from family dinners, or the way tension buzzed between him and Samantha like static electricity. Those subjects didn't belong at a funeral. Or maybe I didn't want to admit how many signs I'd ignored. After the burial, I returned home alone. My suit still smelled faintly of rain. I sat at my kitchen table, staring at my muted phone. 6 missed calls to Samantha, all unanswered. Half a dozen texts sent. None read. The hospital said Daniel died of cardiac arrest brought on by extreme stress. 35 years old. A man who ran marathons and ate vegetables like it was a religion. Stress killed him before life even had the chance. I pulled out my laptop, something I rarely did, and typed Samantha's name into social media. I expected some kind of tribute post, maybe a circular black ribbon or a quote about grief. What I found instead nearly knocked the breath out of me. There she was, smiling, sunlit, bare-shouldered, holding a neon cocktail on a beach. The post was uploaded 2 hours after we lowered Daniel's casket into the ground. The location tag said, Boca Azul, Mexico. A man I recognized, their landscaper Marco, stood beside her, hand resting intimately against her waist. They looked like a couple celebrating a honeymoon, not a widow mourning her husband. The caption read, "Life is short. Live the moments that matter." My chest tightened so hard it felt like my ribs might snap. My son's body was barely in the ground, and his wife was clinking glasses in paradise with another man. The comments made it worse. "You deserve happiness, girl. So glad you finally let go of the drama. Marco looks good with you. Let go of the drama." My son's death was drama? I closed the laptop so fast the lid nearly cracked. The room spun. My hands trembled so violently I had to steady them against the table. And then it happened. My phone buzzed. Not from Samantha. Not from a friend or family member. A message from an unknown number flashed across the screen, but the name attached to it made my blood run cold. "Dad, come to my house immediately. Don't call anyone. Daniel." My vision blurred. The phone slipped from my hands and clattered against the floor. I stared at the message again, and again, and again. I had touched my son's cold forehead in the hospital. I had identified his body. I had buried him this morning. Dead men do not text. So what, or who, had just contacted me? I grabbed my keys with shaking fingers and stumbled toward the front door, each step echoing like a pulse of dread. I didn't know if I was losing my mind, if this was some cruel prank, or if the world had just tilted into something far more terrifying than grief. But I knew one thing. I had to go, because whatever waited for me at Daniel's house, it wasn't going to be simple or safe or sane. The drive to Daniel's house felt unreal, like steering through a dream I couldn't wake from. Every streetlight, every familiar mailbox, every shadow that flickered across the windshield seemed to whisper the same question. How can a dead man send a text? The closer I got, the more my stomach tightened. I had been in his home 4 days earlier, packing clothes with Samantha as she cried into her sleeves. Everything had felt so final then, the death certificate, the calls to relatives, the plans for the funeral. And now this. When I pulled into the driveway, I noticed something odd immediately. The blinds were shut tight even though Daniel always left at least one open. A faint yellow glow leaked through the kitchen window, cutting a thin line across the hedges. I approached the door slowly. My hand shook as I slid my spare key into the lock. The hinges creaked louder than I remembered. "Daniel!" I called out, my voice cracking against the silence. "Are you here?" No answer. The living room looked untouched. Sofa cushions perfectly aligned. The coffee mug he'd left on the table before his trip to the hospital, still sitting where Samantha had set it aside. The air had that stale, closed-up smell, like no one had breathed in the space for days. But then I saw it. A faint shadow flickered against the far wall. Movement. My heart slammed against my ribs. I stepped forward, barely breathing. And there he was, Daniel, alive, sitting at his own kitchen table like he'd simply come home after work. His head was lowered, shoulders hunched, hands wrapped around a cup of coffee that had gone cold. The overhead light cast a sickly glow on his face, making the dark bags under his eyes even more pronounced. When he finally looked up at me, I forgot how to breathe. "Dad," he whispered. I froze. My brain refused to make sense of the sight in front of me. You're supposed to be dead," I said, the words sounding far away, as if spoken by someone else. He winced, almost ashamed. "I know, and I'm sorry for that, but I didn't have a choice." A shaky laugh escaped me. A cracked, hollow sound. "No choice? Daniel, I buried you. I put you in the ground. I stood over your grave while your wife was." My throat closed around the rest. He flinched at the word wife. "I saw the pictures, Dad. Marco. The beach. The drinks." He swallowed hard. "I saw everything." I sank into the nearest chair, gripping its edges like the room was tilting. "Daniel, what happened? How are you even alive?" He rubbed a hand over his face, a gesture so familiar it almost hurt. "I'll tell you everything, but you have to promise you won't interrupt, no matter how insane it sounds." I nodded. He inhaled sharply. 2 months ago, I discovered something at work, something that could destroy a very powerful corporation, the kind of thing that gets people killed." His voice trembled slightly, but his eyes were steady. "I became a whistleblower, and the moment I stepped forward, I stopped being safe. I stiffened. Threats." He nodded slowly. "They told me I had 2 options. Keep my mouth shut, or disappear permanently." Cold dread spread in my chest. "And the heart attack?" "Staged," he said quietly. "Dr. Halden helped me. He owed me a favor from years back. We faked everything, the medical report, the death certification, all of it." My breath hitched. "So I buried an empty coffin," he finished softly. "There was no other way. If they believed I was dead, the threats would stop, at least long enough for the FBI to protect the evidence I turned in." I stared at him, blinking hard. "But why didn't you tell me? Why let me suffer like that?" His expression crumpled. "I wanted to. God, Dad, I wanted to. But the fewer people who knew, the safer you'd be. Even one slip could have gotten us both killed." The logic made sense. The pain didn't. "And Samantha?" I asked, though the question left a bitter taste. Daniel's jaw tightened. "She was supposed to act devastated. She knew the plan. She promised she'd stay low profile until it was safe for us to reunite and leave the country." My heart sank with a heavy, inevitable certainty. But instead, Daniel continued, voice hollow, "She booked a trip to Mexico with the man she'd been seeing behind my back for months. She cashed out my life insurance less than 24 hours after my supposed death." The betrayal hit him visibly. A tremor in his hand, a flicker in his eyes. "She was never planning to meet me in Canada," he whispered. "She was planning to take the money and leave me dead." I leaned back, stunned into silence. "Dad," he said softly, meeting my eyes with a resolve I hadn't seen in him in years, "I didn't bring you here for sympathy." My fingers tightened around the chair. "Then why did you bring me here?" He straightened slowly, the faintest ember of controlled anger lighting in his gaze. Because Samantha thinks she got away with everything. He paused. And I intend to make sure she doesn't. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. The refrigerator hummed softly behind me. The clock ticked on the wall, and Daniel stared at his hands like he was afraid of what they might do. When he finally looked up, his expression was no longer mournful or shaken. It was frighteningly calm, calculated. "Dad," he said quietly. "I didn't just hide to stay alive. I started digging. I felt my pulse quicken." "Digging into what?" "Samantha," he said simply. "Her finances, her messages, her secrets, everything." He reached under the table and pulled out a thin laptop. Not his usual work computer. This one was matte black, unbranded, and looked like it belonged to someone trying not to be found. He opened it, and a folder popped onto the screen labeled S Evidence. Even before he clicked it, I felt my throat tightening. "Daniel, what exactly did you find?" At first he didn't answer. He clicked the folder open, revealing dozens of files, screenshots, bank logs, emails, message threads, and documents I couldn't even begin to understand from just the icons. "This started 6 months ago," he said, scrolling through the timeline he'd built. "Funds disappearing from our shared accounts. Not enough to trigger red flags. A couple hundred here, a couple hundred there." I stared at the screen. Dates lined up neatly, each one accompanied by a small withdrawal marked unknown vendor or gift purchase. I asked her about it. She said she was buying anniversary surprises. His jaw tightened. Turns out she was buying gifts. Just not for me. He clicked another folder. Photos filled the screen. Samantha wrapped around Marco in hotel rooms, in bars, in parking lots. One image was stamped with a date that punched the air out of my lungs. 2 weeks before Daniel's staged death. My voice came out raw. "How long?" Daniel exhaled shakily. 8 months. At least. "I don't believe it," I muttered, rubbing my forehead, though the evidence glared at me from inches away. But he wasn't finished. "That's not the worst part." He pulled up a message exchange between Samantha and a contact listed as MFI Services. "Private investigator. She hired someone to track my mental state," Daniel said, tone flat. "Not to protect me. To prepare a narrative that I was unstable." I scanned the texts. He's been drinking more. Anxiety worsening. Erratic behavior. Might be a danger to himself. Need documentation for long-term plan. My hands shook as I scrolled. "Daniel," I whispered. "She was building a case." "Yes." His voice hardened. "A case that I was spiraling. A case that would make my death," he air-quoted with bitter irony, "look like suicide." A cold, nauseating realization crawled up my spine. That way the insurance payout would look legitimate. He nodded. "Exactly. But why wait?" I asked. "If you hadn't uncovered the fraud at work, would she still have?" He cut me off softly. "Dad, she took out additional life insurance policies on me without my knowledge." He opened another folder. There they were, copies of policy applications with Daniel's forged signature. Policies totaling over $1 million. My hands balled into fists without me realizing. "That woman," I said through clenched teeth, "married you for money." "Yes." "She planned this. For years." "Yes." "And when your staged death happened first, she didn't even hesitate." "No." "She treated it like a jackpot." His voice cracked, but his expression remained stone. "She left the country the moment the payout hit her account." I stood up, pacing, unable to stay seated while the truth sliced through me. "Daniel, we have to go to the police. This is attempted murder. Fraud. Everything." He closed the laptop calmly. Too calmly. "We can't," he said. "Not yet." "What do you mean, not yet?" "We have proof." "Dad," he said, looking me dead in the eyes. "If we go to the police right now, I have to come back from the dead." I stopped pacing. "And if I come back," he continued, "the powerful people who wanted me gone will know I never died. Dr. Halden could lose his license. The FBI's entire case could collapse. And Samantha will walk away claiming she was manipulated by Marco." I sank slowly back into the chair, a sickening truth settling in. So we wait. We don't wait. His voice sharpened. We prepare. For what? For the moment when Samantha realizes she's not as clever as she thinks. Daniel reopened the laptop and showed me the next page in his plan. Her accounts are being watched. Every transaction. And I'm working with a lawyer who already has instructions in place. Instructions for what? He leaned back, eyes burning with controlled fury. To freeze every dollar she stole. But she's in Mexico, I said. And she won't be able to leave, Daniel replied. Once her cards start getting declined. The coldness in his tone chilled even me. Dad? He said slowly, deliberately. Samantha buried me long before I faked my death. He closed the laptop. Now it's my turn to bury her. For 2 days after Daniel revealed the truth, I lived in a strange limbo. Half relieved he was alive, half sickened by the magnitude of Samantha's betrayal. The world continued its ordinary rhythm, but everything around me felt sharpened, heavier, as if the air itself had shifted. Daniel had moved into a small, rented apartment under a false name. I couldn't visit openly, so we met discreetly. Late-night drives, quiet conversations, burner phones. Every moment had purpose. Every word was part of a plan. And at the center of that plan was Samantha, happily ignorant in Mexico. But ignorance never lasts long when money disappears. It happened on a Thursday morning, sooner than Daniel predicted. I woke to 3 unanswered calls from Samantha. I ignored them. She left a voicemail, her voice strained and frantic. Timothy, something's wrong with my bank card. The hotel staff says the payment bounced. My credit card isn't working either. Please call me. I don't understand what's happening. I didn't call her back. Instead, I drove to the small diner where Daniel and I had been meeting. He was already there, hunched over a laptop in a back corner booth. His hoodie's hood was pulled low, obscuring his face. You saw the calls? He asked when I sat down. I did. He gave a tight, humorless smile. Perfect. A notification pinged on his laptop. Daniel clicked it, then let out a satisfied breath. Her main checking account just got flagged, he said. The insurance fund branch froze her payout after receiving the fraud alert we set up. She's locked out of $500,000. I felt no sympathy. None at all. What about the credit cards? I asked. Frozen. He tapped the screen. And the moment she tries the backup card she never told me about. Another ping. He smirked. There it is. Locked. She's stranded. Yes, and that's just the beginning. I leaned back in the booth, both stunned and grimly satisfied. What happens now? She'll panic, he said. She'll call you first because she thinks you're still grieving and vulnerable. Then she'll try me. She thinks you're dead. He nodded. But desperate people make mistakes. She'll try my old number eventually, still active. And when she realizes you're alive, I won't pick up, he said calmly. But the phone logs will be forwarded directly to my lawyer and the FBI. I blinked. The FBI? Daniel turned the laptop toward me, revealing an open email chain with an agent whose signature block read, Special Investigations Unit, Insurance Crimes Division. They don't know I'm alive yet, Daniel explained, but they know my estate believes foul play is involved. They've been watching her accounts ever since the claim was filed. I exhaled slowly. This is bigger than you let on. It had to be, he said. If we want her to pay for what she did, it needs to be airtight. His expression hardened into something sharp, almost surgical. She betrayed me. But what she did to you? Letting you stand alone at my funeral while she drank cocktails on a beach? Dad, that's something I won't forgive. I swallowed, feeling the sting of those words. He wasn't wrong. At noon, my phone vibrated again. Another voicemail from Samantha, her voice cracking. Timothy, please, they won't let me check out. They're threatening to call the police if I don't pay the balance. I don't have anyone else to ask. Please answer. Please. I locked the screen and set my phone down. Daniel watched my reaction carefully. You're doing the right thing, he said quietly. She made her choices. Now she faces the consequences. I nodded, though my chest felt tight. What happens when she comes back? Oh, she will come back, Daniel said with absolute certainty. She has no money. Marco's not paying her bills. And her sister won't support her once the FBI contacts her. His voice lowered. And when she returns, everything collapses around her at once. He slid a folder across the table. What's this? I asked. The next step. I opened it. Inside were printed copies of emails Samantha exchanged with Marco. Messages dripping with contempt for Daniel, discussions of financial schemes, even suggestions of how to make Daniel look unstable enough to get him committed. My jaw clenched. She's a monster, I whispered. No, Daniel corrected softly. She's a predator, but a sloppy one. Sloppy predators get caught. A third ping came from his laptop. Daniel checked it, then smiled, a slow, chilling smile. She just booked a last-minute flight back to Chicago. Lands tomorrow night. Already? She panicked faster than expected. I leaned forward. So tomorrow? That's when we confront her? Daniel shook his head. No. Tomorrow is when she realizes she's not just broke. He tapped the folder between us. Tomorrow is when she realizes she's been under investigation for weeks. And after that? Daniel closed the laptop. After that, Dad. We make sure she never steals another life again. Samantha's flight landed at 8:12 p.m. on a windy Friday night. I knew the exact time because Daniel had sent me the itinerary the moment it hit his inbox. Forwarded straight from Samantha's email after she booked the desperate, one-way ticket home. He didn't need to say anything. The plan was already in motion. I sat in my living room pretending to watch the news but hearing none of it. My phone lay on the coffee table, screen down, as if the device itself felt tainted from the voicemail Samantha had left. The doorbell rang at 9:47. Not a knock. A doorbell. She was still trying to behave like everything was normal. I opened the door slowly. Samantha stood on my porch looking like she'd been dragged through an airport hurricane. Her hair was pulled into a messy bun. Makeup streaked under her eyes. Clothes wrinkled and mismatched. The expensive floral luggage she always bragged about was missing, either lost or pawned. Timothy? She breathed, relief flooding her face. Oh, thank God. I didn't know where else to go. I stepped aside without a word. She hurried past me into the living room like she still belonged in my home. I'm so sorry for everything, she started, dropping onto the couch. I know I disappeared for a while, but grief does strange things. I couldn't function. I didn't sit. I saw the photos, I said quietly. She froze. The fake sorrow evaporated instantly. You saw what? Boca Azul. The drinks. The beach. Marco. Her jaw clenched. She didn't deny it. Instead, she played her next card. I was trying to forget, she whispered, eyes glistening. You can't understand what it's like losing someone you love. Don't? I snapped, and the word came out harsher than I intended. Do not stand in my house and talk about grief as if you didn't vanish and parade around Mexico with another man while I buried my son alone. She flinched. I didn't move, didn't even blink. Finally, she whispered, I need your help, Timothy. Please. I'm broke. The hotel threatened to call the police. My accounts aren't working. Something is wrong. Something is wrong, I said. And you know exactly what. She sprang up from the couch. I had nothing to do with this. I didn't do anything illegal. I pulled a folded paper from my pocket and handed it to her. The FBI notice. Asset seizure. Fraud investigation. Pending interviews. Samantha scanned the page, her hands trembling so violently she nearly tore it. What is this? She stammered. Insurance fraud? What insurance fraud? You filed claims on Daniel's life, I said. Multiple policies. Ones he never authorized. She swallowed hard. I thought he did. We talked about it. No, I interrupted. You forged them. You signed his name. You took the payout. And then you ran. Her eyes darted wildly, searching for an escape that didn't exist. Timothy, listen to me. Marco told me the policies were standard, that Daniel probably expected me to. Marco told you? I repeated slowly. The landscaper you've been secretly seeing for 8 months? Her face drained of color. You're wrong, she whispered. It wasn't like that. I stepped closer. You spent thousands on him. Hotels, gifts, trips, all of it with Daniel's money. Don't you dare tell me I'm wrong. Tears spilled down her cheeks. Not the tearful grief she'd performed after Daniel's death, but cold, panicked tears. I didn't know, she insisted. Marco, he said he loved me. He said, Marco convinced you to defraud your husband? I asked. Or did you come up with the idea together? She pressed her trembling hands to her forehead. This can't be happening. You don't understand, Timothy. I had no idea, Daniel. She stopped abruptly. Too abruptly. I caught the slip. No idea, Daniel, what? I asked. She swallowed. Daniel, she whispered. Daniel had been acting strange for months. Marco said maybe he was depressed. That maybe something would happen eventually. The room went silent. And in that silence, she realized what she'd just admitted. Her eyes widened in horror. I wasn't saying. You wanted him to die, I said softly. You planned for it. You prepared for it. And when it happened sooner than expected, you celebrated. No, she sobbed. I would never hurt Daniel. Never. I stared at her, seeing her clearly for the first time. A woman who thought she was smarter than everyone. A woman who thought money was love. A woman who thought she could outwit death itself. Where is Marco now? I asked. She shook her head, sobbing harder. I don't know. He left me. Blocked me. I can't reach him. Of course he did. Marco had gotten what he wanted. But Samantha hadn't gotten anything. Not even a plan. I don't know what to do, she whispered. Please help me. Please. I exhaled deeply. You need to prepare for tomorrow. Why? What happens tomorrow? The FBI, I said. They want to speak to you. Early. Her face contorted in terror. And Samantha? She looked up with pleading eyes. I leaned closer. You need to be honest, I said. Because the world you built on lies is collapsing. And it won't stop until the truth comes out. Her legs buckled, and she sank onto the couch, sobbing into her palms. And for the first time since Daniel sent that impossible text message, I felt no confusion, no guilt, no hesitation. This was only the beginning. Samantha did not sleep the night before the FBI meeting. I knew this because she called me at 2:11 a.m., 3:04 a.m., and 5:30 a.m. I answered none of them. Her frantic messages stacked up like unread warnings. By 7 a.m., she was already pacing the sidewalk outside her motel, still wearing the same wrinkled travel clothes, trying to look like a grieving widow instead of someone whose world had collapsed overnight. At 7:45, 2 federal agents met her. At 8:03, she was in their car. At 8:50, she was led into a small interview room. And at 9:15, as Samantha sat trembling across from the agents, the next phase of Daniel's plan unfolded quietly on the other side of town. I arrived at the hospital at 1:58 p.m., my hands damp with nerves I couldn't hide. Daniel was already checked into a private room, hooked to blood pressure monitors, wearing a hospital gown, playing the role of a man who had miraculously woken from a coma. Dr. Halden, the doctor who'd helped him stage his death, met me in the hallway. He was normally calm and composed, but today his nerves showed in the slight tremor of his hands. Ready? He asked. As ready as I'll ever be. He nodded grimly. Everything is in place. The hospital has already documented the identification error. The legal team is prepared. All that's left is the reveal. I inhaled deeply and followed him into the room. Daniel looked shockingly convincing, pale, disoriented, weak. He even had that distant, foggy expression people have after long sedation. If I didn't know the truth, I might have believed he'd been unconscious for weeks. He opened his eyes when he heard the door. Dad? He whispered, voice trembling. Where am I? Even though we'd rehearsed it, Hearing those words still made my heart twist. "You're at the hospital, son," I said, stepping closer. "You've been in a coma. A long one." "A coma?" Daniel repeated softly. "But I thought. You collapsed at home," I said gently. "They thought you were gone, but it was a medical error." He let out a shuddering breath, his hand clutching the blanket. "Oh my God! Samantha? Does she know?" I paused. She's being informed. Not a lie. Not exactly. Dr. Halden cleared his throat with professional solemnity. "Mr. Hale, we will notify your son's wife as soon as she is available. However, due to ongoing legal matters, it may take some time." Daniel nodded slowly, playing confused and fragile. I can't believe I'm alive." "Neither can anyone else," I murmured. Dr. Halden checked his watch. "She should be arriving within the hour." My breath hitched. "Already? We notified the federal agents," he said. "They insisted she be updated immediately. She's on her way from the field office." So it was happening. Samantha, coming face to face with the husband she believed was dead. The one she tried to profit from, escape from, replace. Daniel closed his eyes briefly. "When she sees me, what do I do?" "Be honest," I said. "Be confused. Be hurt. Be exactly what she never expected." He nodded. "And you?" he asked. "I'll be here, right beside you." The clock ticked loudly in the quiet room. At 3:04 p.m., I heard hurried footsteps in the hallway. Female footsteps. Desperate ones. Samantha burst into the doorway like a storm blown off course. Her face was blotchy, her hair frizzy, her mascara smudged in streaks. She looked at me first, and for a moment, the fury in her eyes said she blamed me for everything. But then her gaze slid past me, and she froze. Her breath caught in her throat. Her body locked up completely. Daniel lifted his head slowly, as if waking from a dream. Samantha?" he whispered. Her mouth opened soundlessly. He blinked, confused and fragile. "They told me you thought I died." She staggered backward, one hand gripping the doorframe. "No," she croaked. "No, no, no, no." Daniel frowned gently, playing the part to perfection. "Why are you crying? I'm alive." She sank to her knees like her legs had given out. Her whole body was shaking. "Alive?" she gasped. "You're alive." Daniel's expression turned pained. "You sound disappointed." Samantha's face twisted. Guilt, panic, shock, all colliding at once. Daniel, You filed insurance claims?" he asked weakly. "I don't understand. Why would you do that if you thought I might recover?" Tears streamed down her cheeks. "I thought you were dead. They told me. They said, I didn't Marco." She caught herself too late. The room went silent. Marco, the forbidden name she shouldn't have said. Daniel's expression changed. Not dramatically, just enough. Just enough for her to know she had slipped. Just enough for her to understand. She was caught. She was still on her knees, trembling uncontrollably, when the agents stepped into view behind her. The timing could not have been more perfect. When the agents stepped into the doorway, Samantha jerked her head toward them like a cornered animal spotting a predator. Her mascara-streaked face shifted rapidly from shock to fear to something desperate and manic. "Agents Monroe and Keller," she gasped, scrambling to her feet. "Please, you have to listen. This is all a misunderstanding. I didn't know Daniel was alive. I didn't know anything." Monroe, the taller agent, didn't flinch. "Mrs. Hale, please step aside." "Wait." Samantha threw out her hands like she could physically stop the truth. "You don't understand. Marco, he lied to me. He told me Daniel was sick for months. He convinced me to commit insurance fraud?" Agent Keller cut in bluntly. "We have the documents." Samantha swallowed hard, glancing wildly between the agents and Daniel, who still played the fragile coma patient perfectly. Disoriented, hurt, small. "No," she whispered, shaking her head, her voice hitching. "No, I didn't plan anything like that. I was manipulated, Tricked. Marco took advantage of me. Daniel let out a soft, pained breath. Samantha, who is Marco? That single question broke her composure like glass cracking under pressure. He. It's not what it looks like, she stammered. He was just someone I talked to. A friend. I was lonely. You were drifting away. You were consumed by stress, and I didn't know how to help you. Daniel lowered his gaze, pretending to absorb every word. He looked heartbreakingly earnest. A friend? He repeated softly. Her chin trembled. Yes. Daniel glanced toward the bedside table. Perfect cue. Agent Keller? He murmured. Could you hand me my phone? I want to show her something. Keller passed him the device. Daniel opened a folder, one he had shown me days ago. One that contained the final blow. Is this what friends do? He asked quietly, turning the screen toward her. The blood drained from Samantha's face so quickly she looked faint. On screen were the intimate photos, the hotel receipts, the text messages between her and Marco, messages no friend would ever send. Her affair laid bare in bright, condemning pixels. Daniel, she choked. Please, I can explain. He raised a shaking hand. Stop. It wasn't loud. It wasn't harsh. But it cut her off more cleanly than a shout ever could. You told Marco details about my health, Daniel said slowly. My anxiety, my insomnia. You exaggerated symptoms. You sent him messages about me being unstable. I didn't mean for it to go that far, she cried. Marco said you needed help. He said if people believed you were spiraling, it would protect us. Protect us, Daniel echoed. You told him I might harm myself. You told him I was drinking. You helped shape a narrative that I was suicidal. Tears streamed down her cheeks. Marco told me it would look natural if I died. Daniel finished for her, voice trembling. He coached you. You let him. And you both encouraged the idea that my death would solve your financial problems. I didn't say that, she wailed. You didn't need to, Agent Monroe said. The bank transfers, the forged signatures, the policy applications, all in your handwriting. You weren't an innocent bystander. Samantha's knees buckled again, and she collapsed into the chair beside the bed. I loved you, Daniel, she whispered brokenly. I did everything for us. No, Daniel said softly. You did everything for yourself. Her sob turned hysterical. You faked your death. You lied to me. To save my life, he replied. And maybe yours, because the people I exposed weren't going to stop at threats. Silence fell. Heavy. Absolute. Agent Keller stepped forward and placed a folder on the foot of the bed. Mrs. Hale, we have evidence you knowingly filed fraudulent insurance claims less than 36 hours after your husband's supposed death. We have evidence of your affair, the coordinated effort with Marco, and your attempts to build a suicide narrative. Samantha buried her face in her hands. Agent Monroe continued, you can cooperate and help us locate Marco and the associates he's connected to, or you can face all charges at their maximum penalties. Daniel watched her with an expression I couldn't read. Not anger, not pity, something steadier, resolve. I'm alive, Samantha, he said quietly. You didn't lose me. You left me. That shattered her completely. Daniel, please, please, don't let them take me. I can't go to prison. I can't. He closed his eyes. You made that choice long before today. Agent Keller stepped closer. Samantha Hale, please stand. We have additional questions you will answer at our field office. Her legs barely obeyed. She looked like she might collapse with every step. At the doorway, she paused and turned back, face streaked with tears, lips quivering. Daniel, you don't understand. Marco said. Marco is gone, Agent Monroe said. And he's not coming back. The final door between them closed. Daniel exhaled shakily, sinking against the pillows. The fight was draining out of him now that Samantha was gone. I moved to his side. You did the right thing, I said. He nodded once slowly, but his eyes were distant. Dad, he murmured. What I'm about to tell you next is something even Samantha never knew. I straightened. What is it? He looked at me with a seriousness that chilled me. The people who threatened me months ago, they're still out there. And they haven't given up. When the door closed behind Samantha and the agents, the room finally fell still. But Daniel didn't look relieved. He didn't even look triumphant. Instead, a haunted tension crept into his expression. The same look I'd noticed the night he revealed he was alive. "Dad," he said softly, "I didn't tell you everything." The quiet hum of the machines filled the pause between us. I felt a chill slide through my chest. "What do you mean?" I asked. Daniel rubbed his temple with trembling fingers. "The threats that pushed me to fake my death. They didn't just come from the corporation I exposed." "What?" He exhaled slowly, eyes dropping to the blanket pulled over his lap. "The pharmaceutical company Veritex, they were the clients I blew the whistle on. But the CEO wasn't the only one with something to lose. There were investors, international ones, people with money tied so deeply into that arthritis drug that my report to the FBI cost them millions." His voice dropped. "Those people don't send emails. They don't file lawsuits. They send warnings." My stomach tightened. What kind of warnings? Daniel reached over to the bedside table and pulled out a small folder. He slid it toward me. Inside were printed screenshots, coded messages, unknown numbers, encrypted texts. Some were simply threats. Others were more sinister. One message read, "Pull the report or you'll vanish for real." Another, "We know your routes. We know who you love." And one, written 2 weeks before his staged death, "Look over your shoulder." Goosebumps crawled up my arms. "You never showed the FBI these." Daniel shook his head. "No. They told me they already had enough to arrest the CEO and shut the drug down. They didn't want to escalate things with foreign investors until they had solid identities." I stared at the documents, feeling a pressure behind my eyes. "So you're saying the threats didn't stop? Not even after you faked the heart attack?" Daniel looked at me with that haunted expression again. "Dad, faking my death didn't scare them. It confirmed I was a threat." The room suddenly felt too small. "Why didn't you tell me this earlier?" "I didn't want you involved," Daniel said. "I thought if I kept you out of it, you'd be safe. Samantha was already planning to ruin my life. I didn't want you to get caught between her and them." I sank into the chair beside him, absorbing the weight of his words. "So what now?" "Samantha's under investigation. Marco's vanished. The insurance money is frozen. But these people, these investors, they still think you're dead." Daniel nodded slowly. "For now." "That's good," I said quickly. But he shook his head. "No, it's not. Because once the hospital announces my resurrection, the news will spread. And when they realize I'm alive, they'll know I tricked them." I clenched my jaw. "Maybe the FBI can." He cut me off. "They can't protect me from threats they can't identify. These aren't mobsters leaving a paper trail. These are silent partners, offshore accounts, people who pay others to do their dirty work." He looked away, voice dropping. "And Samantha may have been reckless and cruel, but she wasn't the only one they were watching." My heart nearly stopped. "Daniel," I whispered, "are you saying they monitored me too?" He didn't answer immediately. He didn't need to. I felt the blood drain from my face. "You brought me into this by texting me. If they saw that." "They didn't," Daniel said. "I used a burner. No traceable numbers. No GPS. I've been careful." "But were they careful?" I murmured. Daniel's expression darkened. "That's what scares me." A tense silence filled the room. Then, unexpectedly, he sat up straighter, resolve settling onto his face. "But Dad, we have an advantage we didn't have before." "What's that?" He pointed to the folder in my hand. "Samantha. Her cooperation is the key to everything." I blinked. "She'll never help us willingly." "She will," Daniel said, "because she's terrified. She believed Marco because he made her feel special. But the moment she sees what he was actually tied to, she'll start talking." "You think Marco was connected to the investors?" Daniel nodded. "I think Marco was more than a fling. I think he was placed near us intentionally. A pretty face with easy charm, paid to get close, paid to push narratives, paid to help remove me quietly. My veins turned to ice. You're saying Samantha's affair wasn't just betrayal. It was strategy, Daniel finished, and she never even realized she was being used. I slumped back, stunned by how deep this went. What do we do? Daniel looked out the window, jaw tight. We get to Marco before they erase him. I blinked. Erase him? Daniel nodded. If he was a low-level operative, he's disposable. Samantha is leverage. Marco is evidence. And we have to find him before someone else does. He turned toward me, eyes sharp. Dad. If Samantha was a pawn, then we're next on the board. When Daniel said we needed to find Marco before someone else did, he wasn't exaggerating. The man had vanished so completely it was as if he'd walked into the ocean and let the tide erase his footprints. For the next 2 days, Daniel and I lived in a state somewhere between paranoia and purpose. He was discharged from the hospital under the guise of continuing outpatient recovery, and we kept him hidden in the tiny apartment he rented under an alias. Even I used the back stairwell to avoid being seen. But the more we dug into Marco's life, the more disturbing it became. He had no digital trail, no hometown photos, no childhood friends, no old social media accounts. He was like a person invented 5 years ago. He's a plant, Daniel muttered one night, scrolling through the files we'd gathered. He didn't stumble into Samantha's life. He was placed there. I leaned over his shoulder. By who? He clicked a document open. One the FBI had flagged but couldn't fully trace. A wire transfer of $42,000. To Marco, from an offshore account registered to a holding company we couldn't identify. We can't prove it yet, Daniel said. But this is how shadow networks operate. They pay their operatives through layered companies, shell corporations, fake names. Marco was someone's asset. And Samantha believed he loved her, I said quietly. Daniel's jaw tightened. She was an easy target. Lonely. Frustrated. He knew exactly how to manipulate her. He shut the laptop. They used her to get to me. I sat back, absorbing the sickening magnitude of it all. And yet, the deeper truth hadn't changed. Marco wasn't just a cheating gardener. He was the missing link between the threats against Daniel and the larger conspiracy behind Veritex's deadly drug. If Marco disappears permanently, Daniel said slowly, so does the evidence he carries. And if the investors behind Veritex think he's exposed them, they'll silence him, I finished. Daniel nodded. We have to find him first. On the 3rd night after Samantha's collapse at the hospital, we got our first real lead. Daniel's burner phone buzzed at 11:42 p.m. A text from a number we didn't recognize. You're looking for me? My blood ran cold. Daniel stared at the message, expression unreadable. He found us, I whispered. No, Daniel said grimly. He found you. Before I could respond, another message appeared. We need to talk. Tomorrow morning, 10 a.m. Edgewater Docks. Daniel and I stared at each other. It's a trap, I said. Of course it is, Daniel replied. But it's also our only chance. The phone buzzed again. Come alone. Daniel scoffed. Not happening. My hands clenched. We should call the FBI. And tell them what? Daniel asked. That I'm alive? That I faked my death? That the man who seduced my wife and helped stage a narrative for my murder wants to meet? He shook his head. No. We handle this. Carefully. I swallowed. Then we go together. He hesitated. But then slowly he nodded. We go together. The Edgewater Docks were a long, abandoned stretch of lakefront pier dotted with rusted shipping crates and flickering lampposts. The kind of place where good things rarely happen. We arrived at 9:55 a.m. The wind whipped off the water, carrying the smell of gasoline and cold metal. Daniel kept his hood up, hands in pockets, shoulders hunched. Not just to disguise himself, but because the weight of this moment pressed on him like an anchor. At 10:03, a figure emerged from behind a stack of containers. Marco. But he didn't look like the charming man from Samantha's photos. His clothes were dirty, torn at the sleeve. His lip was swollen. A bruise darkened one cheek. He looked like a man who'd been running for his life. When his eyes landed on Daniel, he froze. "You?" he breathed. "You're supposed to be dead." Daniel stepped forward. "You were supposed to disappear quietly." Marco swallowed hard. "Everything went wrong. The investors, they think I screwed up. Samantha cracked. The insurance freeze triggered alerts. And when your hospital error hit the system," he shook his head sharply, "they think I warned you." Daniel's gaze hardened. "Did you?" "No," Marco hissed. "I didn't know you were alive until she screamed your name at the field office." He ran a trembling hand through his hair. "They're coming, Daniel. Not for her. For you. For both of you." I slid down my spine. "Who's coming?" Daniel asked. Before Marco could answer, a sound cracked the air. A sharp, echoing pop. Marco stumbled backward as red blossomed across his shoulder. He'd been shot. Daniel lunged forward instinctively, but Marco held up a bloodied hand. "No, run," he gasped. "They found me. There." Another shot rang out. This one hit the crate behind us, splintering wood. Daniel grabbed my arm. "Dad, move!" We ducked behind the shipping containers as footsteps thundered somewhere on the far side of the pier. Marco's voice carried weakly through the wind. "Trust no one. Veritex isn't the real enemy." And then another shot cut his words short. Silence. Terrifying silence. Daniel looked at me, breath ragged, fear and fury burning in his eyes. "They found us," he whispered. "They're here." Gunfire echoed across the docks like thunder skimming over water. Each shot tore through the morning air with a precision that made the hair on the back of my neck rise. Whoever was shooting wasn't trying to scare us. They were trying to erase us. Daniel pulled me deeper behind the shipping crates, his grip tight, breath ragged. "Dad, stay low," he hissed. A bullet ripped through the edge of the metal container we hid behind, leaving a smoking hole inches from Daniel's head. "We can't stay here," I whispered urgently. Daniel's eyes flicked toward the far end of the pier, an old maintenance tunnel barely visible behind a pile of rusted pallets. "That way," he said. "It connects to the underpass." "And what then?" "We figure that out once we're alive." Another shot hit the crate, sending metal shards clattering across the ground. Daniel didn't wait. He crouched and sprinted, pulling me with him. I matched his speed, heart pounding so loudly it drowned out the chaos behind us. We reached the pallets and ducked behind them. Footsteps pounded closer, steady, heavy, coordinated. Not amateurs, trained. Daniel peered through the cracks between the boards. "There's at least 2, maybe 3. Why aren't they chasing Marco?" I whispered. He didn't answer immediately. His jaw clenched. "Because Marco already served his purpose," he said quietly. My stomach dropped. Another shot rang out, this one farther away. Marco's body lay somewhere behind us, motionless, silent. "We have to move," Daniel said. "Now." We dashed toward the maintenance tunnel. Daniel shoved aside the broken chain link that hung loosely over its entrance. The tunnel smelled damp, metallic, and forgotten. Bits of gravel crunched under our feet as we ran. Behind us, voices echoed. "Check the crates. He was hit. Look for blood. Find the other one." Daniel and I dove deeper into the dark, ducking into a narrow corridor that sloped downward. The echo of our footsteps mingled with the distant rhythm of the lake slapping against concrete. "Who were they?" I asked breathlessly. Daniel didn't slow. "Enforcers. For Veritex?" Daniel shook his head. "No. For the investors behind Veritex." "Why now?" "Marco said they thought he warned me. That means they assume I'm a liability again. And liabilities get erased." We slipped around a corner just as a beam of flashlight light cut through the tunnel entrance behind us. Shadows danced along the concrete walls. "They're coming in," I whispered. Daniel scanned the tunnel and pointed. "There, the maintenance ladder. It leads to the street level." The ladder was old, rusted, barely hanging onto the concrete wall. But it was our only option. "You climb first," Daniel said. "No," I shot back. "You're the one they want most." And you're the one they'll kill first to get to me, he retorted. Climb. Before I could argue again, another round of gunfire echoed through the tunnel, ricocheting off metal. I grabbed the ladder and climbed. Rust flaked under my hands. Halfway up, I heard Daniel grunt. Not in pain, but in frustration, as he returned fire with Marco's dropped pistol. I had no idea when he grabbed it. Move, Dad, he barked. I shoved the hatch above me and pushed myself onto the street. The noise from the pier was muffled now, distant. Wind whipped across my face. I turned and reached back down the hatch. Daniel, come on. He climbed fast, slammed the hatch shut, and staggered onto the pavement beside me. Chest heaving, eyes blazing with adrenaline. We stood on a deserted side street near the waterfront. No sirens, no pedestrians, no cameras. It felt like we had surfaced into another world. Daniel grabbed my arm. We have to disappear. Disappear where? Anywhere they won't expect. We can't go home. We can't go to my apartment. And we definitely can't go to the FBI until we understand what Marco meant. I blinked. What he meant? Daniel nodded. His last words. Veritex isn't the real enemy. I swallowed hard. You think there's something bigger? I know there is, he said. Marco didn't betray Samantha. He didn't betray me. He betrayed the people who hired him. That's why they silenced him. The enormity of the situation crashed over me like a wave. Fraud was just the surface. Samantha was just a pawn. Marco was just an asset. Daniel was the real target. The one man who had uncovered a secret too large to bury under forged signatures and convenient tragedies. I looked at my son, at his bruised face, at the fear he kept hidden behind determination. What do we do now? I whispered. Daniel inhaled deeply, steadying himself. We go dark, he said. For a while. We gather everything we know. Every threat. Every document. Every connection. And then, his eyes hardened with purpose. Then we expose the people who tried to kill me. I exhaled, the weight of what he was asking settling over me. A fight far deeper than anything I'd imagined. Daniel, I murmured, this could get us both killed. He gave a small, grim smile. Dad, they already tried. We began walking, sticking to the shadows, heading anywhere but home. The city felt different now, colder, sharper, as if the streets themselves were watching us. Behind us, the docks lay silent, holding the body of a man who knew too much. Ahead of us stood the truth and the danger that came with it. And for the first time since this nightmare began, I realized the story wasn't ending. It was just changing shape.